Last week, Bettina wrote a newspaper article criticising the government for appointing a female National Suicide Officer. She pointed out that there would be an outcry if a man was appointed head of a leading domestic violence prevention organisation. This is just the latest move by a government determined to deny the fact that suicide is overwhelmingly a male problem, with 6 out of 8 of our daily suicides taking the lives of men. The recently released National Suicide Prevention Implementation Plan is proudly gender neutral, failing to acknowledge that men not only dominate suicide statistics, but offering no special programs to address the unique causes of male suicide, which can differ dramatically from those of women who end their own lives. And now Christine Morgan is to head up suicide prevention. She's a mental health expert, but in fact there's solid evidence that most male suicides are linked not to mental health problems, but to relationship breakup. There's no way Morgan will promote this connection. Bettina's article led to a heated interview with Merrick Watts on Radio 2GB, as the announcer paraded his feminist sympathies and attempted to discredit her arguments. Here's the interview.
Bettina Arndt is a sex therapist, a columnist, an author, an advocate for men's rights. She disagrees with a woman being appointed to suicide prevention advisor because men are overrepresented when it comes to suicide statistics. She says we need a man in the role instead. Bettina Arndt, sex therapist, author and columnist, joins me on the line now. Bettina, thank you for your time.
Hi, Mary. Yeah, it's not just that men overrepresented. Men are overwhelmingly the major victims of suicide. 6 out of 8 of the people who kill themselves every day in Australia are male. And our governments are uniformly denying that fact. I mean, when Scott Morrison made this appointment of Christine Morgan earlier this week, he talked about Indigenous suicide. He talked about veterans. He talked about everything except the major group of suicides, which is ordinary blokes in their 30s and 40s. That's the major group who are killing themselves, and our governments are determined to ignore that.
But why do we need a woman being the National Suicide Prevention Advisor? I mean, surely the focus should be on finding out and trying to discourage men from killing themselves and taking their own lives in such staggering numbers. But do we need a man to do this?
Well, if it was if a man had been appointed head of the Domestic Violence Prevention Organisation, what do you think people would say? There'd be a total outcry.
Yeah.
And here we have an issue where the balance works the other way. This is mainly a male issue. And appointing a woman, and not only a woman whose other hat is all to do with mental health, is a real problem because it implies that the major issue is to do with mental health issues, and that is simply not true when it comes to men killing themselves.
Well, if it's not, then what is it? What is if mental health? Because
it's not mental. It's not mental health.
Then what is it?
Very good research. We have the Australian Institute of Suicide Research and Prevention did research that shows over half of male suicides have no link to mental health problems. With farmers, with rural areas, 78% there's no link to mental health problems. And with older guys, 83% there's no mental health problem. There are other issues involved here. I've just made a YouTube video with a wonderful woman called Mary O'Brien. She's actually a sort of rural consultant, but she's famous because she wrote an article a couple of years ago called Are You Bogged, Mate? And it was about what's happening to men in the bush, in rural areas, why they're killing themselves. And she's outspoken about the fact that we're getting it wrong. Our governments are getting it wrong. The reasons men are killing, we know why men are killing themselves. The major issue is linked to relationship breakup. Over half of male suicides, according to our big suicide research organisation, are linked to relationship issues and all the other things that go with that. 1 in 20 is associated with child custody issues, 1 in 10 with pending legal problems. And, of course, what happens if you have a relationship breakup? You end up in court very often. 1 in 6 related to money issues, which is exactly what happens to men when they get divorced and have to fight family court battles.
Yes, but Bettina, I mean, the thing is, there's two people.
Sorry, go on.
But Bettina, there's two people in a relationship. If so many suicides, the catalyst for it is a breakdown in relationship, then surely, a woman would be able to identify the same things. They know what it's like to be in a relationship. Women know what it's like to be, a part of a separation or a divorce, and they see those pressures as well. So why does it need to be a man?
Well, it is a man. That's what the research shows.
Why does it need to be a man? Why does it need to be a man as the National Suicide Prevention Advisor?
I'm simply saying, I think it's extraordinary to have a woman in charge of this important advisory post when the problem is mainly male, and when the government we have a national suicide prevention strategy that's just been released, an implementation plan which is gender neutral. It deliberately doesn't mention the fact that the problem is predominantly male. Now, how do you explain that?
Well, I don't know how you explain that, but it's look. I'm a man, Bettina, and I've lost friends, and quite recently I've lost a mate who took his own life. Right, so I don't care who's in that role. I don't think we need to go out and get a man specifically to fill that role. What we want is action, and we want the best person in that position. Surely it should be based on merit. And the idea that somebody who has got a background in mental health, that's only going to assist it, surely. I mean, what if you get somebody whose experience is in transport? How's that going to help? If you get a female whose background is in transport, what's that got to do with suicide prevention? Just because they're a female?
Merrick, we have to look at the facts. If our good Australian research shows us the problem is not mental health, that it's mainly to do with relationship issues, why aren't we addressing that?
Well, we should address the fact that...
Why are we lying about that?
But Tina, I'm not saying that's the problem. What I'm saying is that it doesn't... If it is based around relationship breakdowns, then let's focus on that. Let's get whoever's in that position to focus on the issue rather than on the gender of this person who's going to investigate the issues.
I've written for this in the Financial Review. People can read my article today. I used the issue of the appointment of this woman as one example of the fact that we are not getting this right. And I talk about the fact that our national prevention plan doesn't mention men, which is just extraordinary.
But I think, Bettina, honestly, it distracts from the situation, to be completely frank. I think once you push the conversation about the gender of the person who's in that role, I think you're just having a conversation where the air, the oxygen, the energy could be redirected back into the problem, which is stopping men from killing themselves and looking at the reasons why they do it, which are the relationships.
Merrick,
sorry?
You read my article, which talks about all the research that is being ignored by our government, and the fact that our government and our Prime Minister is deliberately not talking about the major group of people committing suicide, which is ordinary blokes. It's not Indigenous blokes. It's not veterans. They are high-risk groups.
Yeah, they are. Absolutely, they are. So many veterans are taking lives. So many Aboriginal...
The biggest group is family men in their 30s and 40s, and mainly men who've been involved in family relationship breakups.
Then great.
And why aren't we talking about that? Right. Why aren't we giving money to that?
Thanks everybody for supporting me on my YouTube channel. I've got growing numbers of subscribers, which is really exciting. If you'd like to support me financially, go to my donate page on my website. Thanks a lot.